The majority of the people that are coming from this country are good, hardworking, honest, family-oriented people.
The most effective way of securing the border that we've seen is a three-tiered approach with both physical barrier and technology backing that up, along with a manned response to illegal entries.
That's what we catch, and we don't catch but 10 to 15% of what comes into this country.
De una oportunidad a los emigrantes.
Niños son de acá, entonces pues quiero que desde chiquitos ya aprendan inglés.
We were in those families' shoes. We were those families in the past.
We've been importing Mexican fruits and vegetables through the Nogales, Arizona, Mariposa port of entry for over a century.
Everybody have family to help. Some people don't have anybody.
One of the main issues that affects Tucson sector is the gotaways. Not enough focus has been done and put on these gotaways.
Every which way. It is coming in the same ways, it's just coming in at a much greater rate.
We often think about Border Patrol along the U.S.-Mexico border, but I was recently given an all-access tour of the Mariposa Port of Entry to see CBP's other mission, Customs and Border Protection.
We collect about $230 million in taxes and duties for the U.S. Treasury budget a day.
Only the IRS brings in more money to the Treasury, according to Nogales Port Director Michael Humphreys. While you'll find busier ports of entry in California and Texas, truck and rail traffic through Nogales is increasing. So is the commitment to international trade. Construction is ahead of schedule on the $134 million project connecting the Mariposa Port of Entry to I-19 with 2 flyover ramps. Humphreys acknowledges that while trade is increasing through his ports, so are the drugs being smuggled. That puts the Mariposa and Deacon City ports of entry among the busiest for drug seizures along the southwest border.
Cartel south of here is very, very active at this time.
Yeah, and a lot of fentanyl?
Fentanyl is really increased, especially in the last year. I believe we're up over 168% on fentanyl. And fentanyl, most of them are counterfeit tablets.
Humphrey says he's proud of his officers' efforts to stop drug traffickers. In the 18 hours before our visit, his officers thwarted 3 different attempts to smuggle drugs into the U.S. in a passenger car, a commercial truck, and on a rail car. Hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of fentanyl, meth, cocaine, and heroin seized. Humphrey started our all-access tour where they inspect cars and buses entering from Mexico.
You can't stop every vehicle and inspect every vehicle because the lines will be, tens of miles back.
What do you think your rate is of successfully, nabbing the smugglers?
I don't have a percentage, but our officers do very well. Like I told you, in the last 18 hours or so, they've gotten 3 significant narcotic seizures. They're keen on people behavior, anomalies with vehicles. They use K9, for example. We have specialized team members specializing in compartment detection, just all kinds of things. And they're finding narcotics in everything from spare tires of vehicles, front and rear bumpers. We're talking in the transmission, the transaxles, in the engine even, we've gotten narcotics. Yeah. Seats, gas tanks, anywhere there's a void in a vehicle, we've probably seen it used.
Next, we go above the personal vehicle lanes to see the inspections continue. That includes cars and pickups going into Mexico. Agents are looking for drug money going back down to the cartels, along with weapons and ammo. In May, officers seized this high-powered machine gun before crossing into Mexico. Also on this day at the Mariposa Port of Entry, long lines of semis carrying fruits and vegetables and other goods from Mexico into the U.S. Whether it's a big rig or a compact car, CBP officers check documents and look for anything suspicious.
They're interacting with the traveler in front of them, but what are they doing?
Right.
They have the death grip on the steering wheel. Is that carotid artery going?
Yeah.
Are they failing to make eye? There's so much.
On the truck side of the port, some of the semis are selected for secondary inspection.
Some get backed up to the dock, others don't. Depends on the commodity, if the officer saw anything. There's some that have to come out for one reason or another. High risk of of some kind of pest or something. Others are sent in for maybe a narcotics exam. You know, the officer, just intuition, you know, something doesn't feel right. Yeah. And they'll send it on over here for an exam.
Right. This is where you really feel it, isn't it? You really understand how much produce, how much goods come through the Port of Nogales.
Right. Like I say, yesterday we had over 1,900 trucks. Represents tens of millions of dollars going north. You know, this is all going to go to local warehouses. You'll see them up and down I-19, and there's trucks waiting there to load up and go north. You know, New York, Seattle, California, San Francisco, Chicago. They're going to take wide and far throughout the U.S. I see more trade coming in. I see more jobs coming in. I see more officers and agriculture specialists coming in. I see the community, the whole community prospering from this, from local businesses to even the chains. You see it coming. Yeah. It's on the horizon.
And you're ready for it.
We're ready for it, absolutely.
Bienvenidos a los Estados Unidos. Welcome to the United States. That's what migrants see when they enter Casalitas, a shelter located in the heart of Tucson.
We can process anywhere from like 20 to 90 people per day. It really depends on our community partners, what DHS is doing, and we get very little notice of what it could look like.
Diego Piña Lopez and his team at Casalitas are seeing the result of what's happening at our southern border daily, but they say they're fully equipped to help.
Our community here in Tucson, or just all over Arizona, as I've learned in the last few months, is really motivated, passionate, and supportive of our brothers and sisters just south of us, or really around the world, as we're seeing.
Dozens of volunteers give their time to help migrants with anything from paperwork to having a good meal.
So usually it takes about a day to 3 days for guests to leave us.
I met a woman from Cuba, Os Ladies, who asked to remain anonymous.
Yo soy una migrante más que quiere migrar a Estados Unidos con un estatus migratorio legal. No quiero entrar ilegal. Sé que ilegal las cosas son muy difíciles en Estados Unidos.
She and her teenage son waited for nearly a year and a half to enter the U.S. in Nogales, Sonora. That could be the result of a few things. The migrant protection protocols instated in 2019. It requires those crossing into the U.S. without proper documentation to wait in Mexico until their court date. Or Title 42, which returns people to the country they entered from due to the pandemic. For Os Ladies, coming to the U.S. was about her and her family's safety.
Yo vine para tener una tranquilidad con mi hijo, puesto que en Cuba no la pudo tener. Y en México tampoco.
And she has a message for the president.
De una oportunidad a los emigrantes que estamos pidiendo asilo de distintos países, puesto que yo vengo de un albergue en el cual todos hemos pasado muchos problemas, muchas situaciones por el camino. Y lo único que pedimos es una oportunidad que nos ayude a poder pasar para Estados Unidos.
Os Ladies says she wants her son to get a good education, and she hopes to find work once they reach the East Coast. While she continues her journey, volunteers get ready for another group of migrants, and that's where the shelter asks for the community's help.
Every time a family leaves or comes to our shelter, they usually come on with the clothing that they're wearing. Very few have extra stuff. And it always kills me that I have, for men primarily, one bag of boxer briefs sometimes. And I'm like, okay, I gotta go shop, buy some more really quickly, but I'm so limited on the resources funding that I have.
You can donate items to the shelter and even sign up to volunteer your time. Sierra Encinas, KGUN 9 on your side.
Little by little, year by year, the Douglas Port of Entry makes improvements to modernize how they verify travelers, updating facilities for Customs and Border Protection, and considering the safety of Douglas residents. But the biggest changes Mayor Donald Hewish is waiting on, such as a major overhaul and a separate commercial port, may get federal funding this year.
So as soon as they say it's funded, we're running.
The Raul H. Castro Port of Entry is outdated and overburdened.
The last major renovation was done in 1993. So it's just been very minor things that have been done these past few years.
A major concern for the current port is the use of hazardous waste transported by tanker trucks and semis. Douglas Mayor Donald Hewish wants a separate commercial port that will take truck traffic out of Douglas's downtown area and take the waste as far away from residents as possible.
We literally have to shut down the port of entry for hours at a time to move everything out of the way, to make some adjustments of overhead things, to be able to get those through, but just not a good situation.
The commercial port will be 4 miles west of Douglas city limits and will cost about $175,000 to build.
In fact, we're hopeful that with the recent proposal by President Biden for infrastructure, that we will be able to receive funding through that. And then they need to modernize the existing port of entry for another $125,000, $150,000 to be able to handle people like you and I that would just want to cross and either visit family or take advantage of old Mexico.
Mayor Hewish fairly confident, saying if the approval doesn't fall into this year's infrastructure funding, hopefully it will next year. And that will be a major economic boom for the city of Douglas.
I can't stress enough the importance of this for not only Douglas, but the entire state. We currently cross about $4 billion worth of goods through our little port of entry right here. And we anticipate that will, once it's built, that over those 5 years, it will double.
Some improvements on his list. Mayor Hewish says the port as it is now is inadequate to process and hold people, those seeking asylum and those who break the law. The commercial port is set to have climate-controlled inspection so goods like produce aren't sitting out in the open.
And all those bells and whistles and hoops that you all have to go through has to happen at a federal level. We're also in contact with our counterparts in Mexico on both a local, state, and national level.
With support from both Arizona senators, Congresswoman Kirkpatrick, Governor Doug Ducey, and neighboring states, Mayor Hewish says the city of Douglas is just waiting for the green light from the feds.
It'll be the shot in the arm that Douglas has never seen. And we understand we're in a corner of the state, but this creates so many more possibilities to be able to enhance our trade with Mexico.
Mayor Hewish says what makes the Douglas port of entry unique to the others is that it's not as congested. He's hoping the upgrades will have more people pass through, but in a way that will still allow traffic to pass through efficiently.
As we become modernized and become the state of the art, people are going to want to come through here. And, you know, our other ports of entry in San Luis and Nogales, we all have issues. We all need improvements. And so as we work together for the state of Arizona, the good of the state of Arizona, I think we all benefit.
Once federal funding is approved, the updates and commercial port of entry is expected to be completed within the next 5 years. Taja Davis, KGUN 9 on your side.
There are about 150 members of the Fresh Produce Association of the Americas, and Jamie Chamberlain is one of them.
We've been importing Mexican fruits and vegetables through the Nogales, Arizona, Mariposa Port of Entry for over a century, and really helping feed North America, which is something that we're very, very proud of in this community.
Right off the interstate in Nogales, you'll find Chamberlain Distributing, and it's not a small operation.
Well, we're bringing in around $4.5 billion worth of fresh fruits and vegetables from all over Mexico, from as far south as Oaxaca and Colima and Jalisco, but our main areas that we import our products from are Jalisco, Sinaloa, and Sonora.
Speaking of imports, this multi-billion-dollar business handles a lot.
And we're bringing in tomatoes, bell peppers, cucumbers, beans, a lot of the traditional vegetables that you see on your grocery store every single day.
And Chamberlain says being a distribution hub in Nogales gives them an advantage.
Here, we actually make and build loads here, so a customer from Chicago or a customer from Philadelphia or Toronto may call us up in the morning and say, we'd like 4 pallets of squash, 5 pallets of bell peppers, 3 pallets of beans, and we build a load here.
Chamberlain Distributing has been doing this for more than a century, and because of that, they have customers in food service, wholesale, and chain stores, and the distribution reaches far beyond the communities of southern Arizona.
All over the United States, all over Canada, all over. We go to Asia with quite a bit of our hard squashes. We go to Asia with our melons.
But when COVID-19 made its appearance last year, everything changed. Many companies like Chamberlain Distributing run off of contracts, and when most restaurants were closing during the pandemic, those contracts couldn't be fulfilled.
So a lot of our produce was trying to get funneled through the distribution channel of chain stores. And chain stores typically, if you've ever seen the back of of your local chain stores, they don't have a lot of room. So it was impossible to get the amount of produce that was available to get it into the chain stores.
And remember walking into a store months ago with nothing on the shelves?
It wasn't because the shelves were empty necessarily that there was no food around the country. There was a lot of domestic product and there was a lot of imported product from all over the world, except we just couldn't get it on the shelf fast enough.
But when many operations were slowing down or even closing, this businessman took on what some may call a risky challenge.
As soon as the state closed up for COVID, I started building my new building. I felt there was an opportunity there.
Opportunity, indeed. That new building we're talking about is 60,000 square feet, completely refrigerated, and is a brand new option for handling exotic fruits that are grown in Mexico, like papayas, mangoes, and avocados.
I wanted to have a facility where all of those products could be transported at a cheaper cost through Mexico and come out here to Nogales and distributed to the West Coast a lot easier.
It takes a lot of business sense to take on a project of this size during a global pandemic.
I just felt that when the desperation is at an all-time low, that's when you go forward, and that's when you see some great opportunities.
But the benefit may have outweighed the risk. It's a small-town operation going on its 50th year in business, continuing to bring fresh food to not only all of us in southern Arizona, but the rest of the world too. Mark Charter, KGUN 9, on your side.
The signs are everywhere.
Every which way. It is coming in the same ways, it's just coming in at a much greater rate.
Discarded items left behind by illegal crossers traveling through a hotspot for smuggling, Vico Valley, an area south of I-8 near I-10. It's what Pinal County Sheriff Mark Lamb shows sheriffs across the country who want to see the crisis firsthand.
The carpet shoes, your backpacks, all this stuff littered in our desert, when they see that 60 to 70 miles from the border in my county, that has a lasting impact on them.
The corridor is the last line of defense before smuggling enters Phoenix and beyond. He's seen a dramatic rise in pursuits since the first of the year.
We've had probably 100% increase in pursuits with smugglers. Here's 2 emails from in the last 24 to 48 hours of pursuits where it ended in high-risk stops, and we had 6 in one vehicle, and this one ended up having another 6 or 7 undocumented aliens in there. This is every day, sometimes twice a day.
Let's look at more numbers. Trafficking has increased 200-fold, he says.
Nobody comes across this border without paying the cartel. They're starting to wear wristbands because the cartel wants to make sure they paid before they come across.
And many, Lamb says, are being forced to traffic drugs into the U.S. Those backpacks can be filled with drugs like fentanyl and methamphetamines, smaller in size and now much easier to transport than pot.
Well, now they can carry hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of drugs in a single backpack, a small backpack, like a child's backpack.
Take a look at these stats in Pinal County alone. In 2018, deputies made 30 fentanyl seizures. In 2019, 677. But in 2020, it jumped to 200,000 seizures. And this year so far, more than 90,000 seizures, addictive drugs that are making their way into Arizona communities.
That's what we catch. And we don't catch but 10 to 15% of what comes into this country.
Here, breathe this in. Breathe it in. We'll take it to the hospital, okay? All right, have you done this before? You've never taken fentanyl before?
Lamb says resources to capture smugglers is now spread thin. The added manpower to stop the surge in smuggling comes directly out of his budget. He's now hoping the federal government cracks down on illegal crosses, and soon.
It's presenting a danger to our community, but it's presenting a danger to us in law enforcement. It's only a matter of time before that boils over.
Meantime, over the next few months, his deputies will be out looking for those who leave trails of discarded items.
My people will spend the majority of our time this summer doing humanitarian missions with the Border Patrol, where the smugglers will leave people in the desert for dead, and we will have to go find them.
Valerie Cavazos, KGUN 9 on your side.
It stopped this construction. It's like frozen time.
President Biden's executive order stopped construction of the border wall, but left gaps for local authorities to fix.
We're on our own out here.
Cochise County Sheriff Mark Daniels says this is not what they wanted.
This is worse now than it was before. There was no infrastructure but mountains. Now we have infrastructure and we have holes in our wall.
Now here you can see one of the holes in the wall. They just put up a makeshift fence to prevent people from coming in, but as the wall continues up, once you get to the top, it just ends, and that creates a path for migrants to cross into the United States.
We just build infrastructure for the cartels.
Mountains had kept people away, but a path built for construction vehicles is now being used by migrants.
And based on the stats, 2,500 to 4,000 people a day on the southwest border being apprehended. And that doesn't include the getaways.
Is this a crisis at the border?
This is a crisis all along the southwest border. And it's all built around a hasty decision, a hasty executive order, and lack of collaboration between local, state, and the federal.
Now Governor Ducey is speaking with Sheriff Daniels about the possibility of sending the National Guard in to help.
We're planning on meetings here in the near future to discuss what's the best approach.
Daniels is turning to Washington for answers.
I would just be happy if Washington, D.C. would come out and say, we have a crisis on our border. Not a challenge, but a crisis, because there's no organized plan. No fault of local law enforcement or state government. It's because we were not involved in the initial plan. So we want some answers, we want some questions, and we need to work together to solve this.
Greg Bradbury, KGUN 9, on your side.
53 years of law enforcement, all here in Nogales and Santa Cruz County. So yeah, I've seen this border change from day to night, not always for the best.
When Tony Estrada retired as Santa Cruz County Sheriff, he'd spent 27 years as sheriff, longer than any sheriff in Arizona history. He began his career as a Nogales police officer in 1966. We talked to him in the closing days of the Trump administration, just before Estrada's retirement. He says the biggest change he's seen in his time in law enforcement is how our country handles immigration.
The tactics and the policies that have been coming down are probably pretty cruel. With regards to that. That's something I didn't see when I was growing up. People could come across the border easily. We weren't having those issues at that time. We were having very little problem with drugs, as a matter of fact. I came in 1966. It started picking up here shortly after that. By the 70s, we were really facing people coming around and picking up drugs.
Tony Estrada was born in Mexico. He was just a child when his mother moved his family to the U.S.
She managed to do it through my father having a job and just merely getting a letter of employment. And that's all it took. Relatively easy. She paid a quota or a fee in order to do it. So my mother and 4 of us immigrated.
Estrada says his family moved across the border for a better life, and he sees the same positive ambition in most people trying to come here now.
They don't come here to harm anybody. They don't. They're not thieves. They're not rapists, they're not drug dealers. We've got enough of those people in this country already, okay? The majority of the people that are coming from this country are good, hardworking, honest, family-oriented people.
Estrada says people who think his hometown is some lawless war zone do not know Nogales and have probably never been there.
So the issues that they think about the border, about the violence in the border, they're kind of restricted to Tucson and Phoenix because that's where the drugs are going and that's where the people are going.
And Estrada thinks poverty and drugs create much larger problems than issues on the border. Craig Smith, KGUN 9, on your side.
More than 178,000 migrants were encountered at the U.S.-Mexico border during the month of April. That's the highest one-month total in more than 2 decades, according to Customs and Border Protection. But that doesn't take into account an even bigger issue, according to National Border Patrol Council Vice President Art Del Cueto.
One of the main issues that affects Tucson sector is the gotaways. Not enough focus has been done and put on these gotaways.
Del Cueto says they estimate there have been well more than 60,000 gotaways just in the Tucson sector this fiscal year.
They currently lead the country in gotaways. Those are the individuals that did that extra to try to avoid apprehension, to try to avoid detection, and those are where I believe your true hardened criminals are. And we're not talking about people just from South America or Central America. We're talking about people from all over the world.
According to the Washington Post, U.S. border agents are busy attending to migrant families and unaccompanied children. That allows nearly 1,000 people per day to sneak into the U.S. along the southwest border.
When you're seeing so many unaccompanied minors turning themselves in, it removes the focus of the actual agents and the mission, because it's removing them from areas on the line that are now exposed to the criminal cartels, to the drug traffickers, to the smugglers that are smuggling individuals that have, a higher criminal background, and at the same time to a lot of the sex traffickers. And what it's doing is it's creating gaps in Arizona particular, because a lot of these individuals that are being detained, that are turning themselves in, it's further for an agent here than say areas of Texas to have to go from the area that they apprehend them to an actual processing center.
CBP has spent more than $1 billion to update surveillance technology and cameras. They can more easily detect illegal crossings, but catching them is another issue. And Del Cueto says that's not just a southern Arizona problem.
People need to understand that these issues don't stop here. These people are not just staying here. The drugs are not staying here. Everything, it's affecting everyone in the country. It's going to affect middle America. It's going to affect schools throughout the United States. And it is frustrating.
The National Border Union Vice President says another big concern is the drug trafficking. According to Del Cueto, the cartels are smuggling drugs through remote areas of Pima County, taking advantage of agents busy transporting migrant families and unaccompanied children to processing.
It's been communicated to me through the agents out there is they're seeing methamphetamines, they're seeing heroin, they're seeing a large number of fentanyl that's again coming through the United States. And as I said, that doesn't stay here. It goes through all over the country.
As a member of the National Border Council, Del Cueto is calling on Washington for help.
I think people need to come together and figure out, hey, we have a problem right now. The American public deserves border security, and regardless of what side of the aisle you are at right now, everyone deserves to be safe in their home.
Despite the current situation at the border, Del Cueto says his Border Patrol agents remain committed to their mission.
We have very dedicated agents that patrol our nation's borders, and they come to work each and every day, regardless of who is in charge, who the president is. They believe in the mission, and they're still out there doing a very tough job.
Art Del Cueto is concerned as we head into the hot summer months. Here in Pima County, in 2020, there were 220 undocumented border crosser deaths.
This is the international border, Mexico just on the other side, also known as the Arizona Trail. Hundreds of people every year take this straight into Cochise County and into the rest of the state.
Cochise County.
And driving along the southern border, you'll see how different each area is. Terrain changes and barrier changes. Some areas faultier than others. And you can also see construction material dormant after an executive order stopped Trump-era construction.
The most effective way of securing the border that we've seen is a three-tiered approach with both physical barrier and technology backing that up, along with a manned response to illegal entries.
When border construction stopped, deputies explained technology installation did too.
Technology is extremely important to what we're doing right now. Without that technology, a physical barrier can be breached, it can be cut, it can be gone over, under, around, and through.
On our ride along the southern border, equipment meant to be used for fiber optic technology is now laying unusable.
Where they cut that fence.
Deputies also showed me several areas where they say the border was breached, each patched up area marked.
So if that fiber optic technology was in place, the cartel wouldn't have come and cut this section out.
They say detection would also help protect people.
It would help us detect people that were approaching that would climb over the fence. It would detect tunneling underneath the fence.
But there is some form of backup in Cochise County. The Sheriff's Department has its own camera system. The ops are private because it's a matter of national security. But deputies with access receive notifications showing the area entries are made.
Spring of 2020, we were averaging probably 300 to 400 bodies, illegal entries into the through our camera network per month. March of 2021, the most recent month that we have your numbers for, we detected 3,379 illegal entries into the country.
But the challenge still lies in the tactics smugglers are using to lead people into the U.S.
This is what we call a carpet booty. So they put this on the bottom of their feet, and as you can see, it has carpet on the bottom of it. And when they walk through softer ground, the dirt, it leaves very limited track where it's hard to see their track. So they're trying to cover up their track signs so we can't detect.
As far as immigration reform and what it could do here in Cochise County, deputies say there's a difference between reform and border security. Reporting in Cochise County, Sierra Encinas, KGUN on your side.
Cruzando La Linea, crossing the line. That's what some families that live on the Mexico side of the border have to do to bring their kids to school here in Nogales, Arizona. As the sun rises at the border, you see dozens of children and teenagers with their backpacks on, ready to make their way from Mexico to Arizona for school. Vanessa Castro tells me she lives in Mexico and crosses every day to bring her 2 daughters to the Lourdes Catholic School. She says sometimes during the car ride into Arizona, the girls are still getting ready. Vanessa says while she is not a U.S. citizen, her kids are, and she wants to make sure they learn English.
We basically monitor the students. If a student needs help, we provide extra help.
Sandra Contreras is the middle school and high school principal at Lourdes Catholic School.
Those that are completely Mexican, both parents and students, we provide them with a visa.
In other cases, the students are U.S. citizens, but at least one parent is not.
They don't need to have a USA address.
For public schools in Nogales, it's a different story.
Usually they do visit, go back and forth. They have grandparents, they have family over there, but overall the district just requires them to provide proof of residence within the district.
Nogales Unified School District Superintendent Fernando Parra says students that live in Mexico can attend a public school, but they must pay tuition of about $760 a month.
There's 10 that are attending right now that are U.S. citizens and 1 Mexican citizen, 11 total for this year.
But there is a limit for Mexican citizens.
Mexican citizens only have a year to be able to do that. And U.S. citizens residing in Mexico can continue to do that as long as they enroll in school and they pay tuition.
At Lourdes Catholic School, Contreras says they have about 60 families that cross the border to attend classes.
The classes are small. Teachers have more opportunity to help depending on their cases.
We caught up with some 5th graders that make the early morning journey to school.
And then after I eat, I go to the line and cross.
Some of the girls wake up as early as 3 in the morning.
Right now I speak more English than Spanish.
A big difference for the students that went to school in Mexico before coming here.
In Mexico, they don't teach too much English, like only 30 minutes of English.
Contreras knows their story well because she used to be in their shoes.
Yes, I know what it's like to cross the border, to get up early and stay in line.
All to come get an education right here at the same school she's now a principal at.
We didn't think of it in a here we go. We have to go and stand in line. No, it's just a normal, life. That's what you do, living in a border.
That's exactly what many families like Vanessa's continue to do. She says it's so the girls know it's possible.
Anyone can get where they want to be and accomplish their goals.
And the students sure do have plenty of goals.
I would like to be a teacher, a chef.
Contreras and her staff are working to make sure these little scholars never stop dreaming, no matter where they come from. Lydia Camarillo, KGUN 9, on your side.
The children come in every day.
Victor Rodriguez has been working in the city of South Tucson for a few years now.
And then Las Abuelitas, where we are right now, the after-school program.
The program helps kids from low-income families with things like reading. During the pandemic, the job has shifted to providing food to kids in need.
We try it and then we wait for the kids to come.
But for Victor, it's more than just a job.
Because we were in those families' shoes. We were those families in the past.
The Rodriguez family knows struggle. On the other side of the border, they lived inside of a cardboard box with an abusive father.
Tenía que ayudarlos a ustedes.
I had to help them, their mother says. So she made the journey across the border at 22 years old with 3 children, all under the age of 5. Victor says images like these of kids being dropped over the border wall remind him about how lucky they are.
Yeah, my mom always tells us that we're a very lucky family. And blessed by God, she's always telling that to us. Because many families, they come with the same mindset to achieve an American dream, but many can't make it.
That American dream didn't always look clear for them, struggling to make ends meet.
She worked a lot. She worked by selling tamales. She worked at a retail store as an illegal individual. So that money that she would get from her income, that would go directly to rent and utilities. So like, what do we do? Like, how do we get the groceries and food on our table? So that's when we sought for help.
But soon success followed. Dulce Rodriguez, the oldest, now a graduate of the University of Arizona.
Ay, pues me siento feliz porque era mi sueño, como yo nomás llegué hasta el 6º grado.
She says she was happy because it was her dream, as she only went to 6th grade. The other 2 are in college now, and they are sharing their experiences with others.
And they ask questions like, can I do this? Like, is college possible for me? Is getting good grades possible for me? Is learning English possible for me? So I try to motivate them because everything's possible for children here in America.
Everything's possible, including citizenship, a step for the children to continue to help others in the community.
We want to continue helping those that are like us because they need the help, and we see that. And that's why we're very dedicated in that and determined to help those that are coming the same as us.
Greg Bradbury, KGUN 9, on your side.
Really, there's no end in sight to when those, when that backlog will ever end, if ever.
If you or a loved one has a case before immigration court, you might be in the longest line the court has ever known.
Well, right now there are approximately 1.3 million cases pending in immigration court. That's a pretty significant increase from the number of cases that were pending just 4 years ago.
Immigration attorney Maurice Goldman says one reason has to do with the last presidential administration and the number of people arrested for violating immigration laws.
A higher level of enforcement under the Trump administration.
The pandemic presented a roadblock, but Immigration Court Judge Samuel Cole, who spoke with us as a member of the National Association of Immigration Judges, says the delay's impact will extend well beyond.
And even outside the pandemic, the wait time is, or the years people are waiting is really pretty substantial. You might have a case heard or scheduled for sometime in 2023, 2024.
Goldman says this is in part because immigrants waiting on their trials are more willing to argue their case before the court.
So people are not as willing to just give up like they might have previously. They're going to actually have their day in court and be able to fight their case.
Maybe, change of administration.
Cole describes a problem with how much money is put into the courts versus other aspects of immigration.
There really is a difference between how much money that has been allocated for immigration enforcement and how much money has been allocated for the immigration courts.
The reason? The U.S. immigration court system is not independent, like most other courts in the country.
And that's why you see the backlog has gone up. Frankly, the immigration courts just aren't a priority and have not been a priority.
Goldman tells his clients the courts will decide their fates, but someone else decides the fate of the courts.
No, they may be waiting for the Department of Justice to come down and give them directives on it.
The Executive Office of Judicial Review under the Department of Justice governs the immigration courts.
Judges used to be able to administratively close cases.
Cole says in the past, this would move cases along a lot quicker.
But that tool has been taken away over the past 4 years.
He stopped short, though, of laying the court's issues at the feet of the Trump administration.
The immigration courts have been used as a political tool, as a weapon for the immigration priorities of whatever administration is currently in office.
For Attorney Goldman, the current administration can fix things.
There is potential for Joe Biden to revert back to the pre-Trump policy of using more discretion as far as who to put in front of the immigration court and who to deport.
Going back to a court, he says, that prosecutes people who are actually a threat to the public.
Versus a mass majority of people who have either no criminal history or no, very limited, low-level misdemeanors.
Cole says the immigration court system would better serve the public's interest as an independent court.
Many organizations have endorsed the idea of an independent immigration court.
Among them, he listed his own organization, NAIJ, the Federal Bar Association, and the American Bar Association. The court's authority, the EOIR, provided this statement on the current backlog. The Executive Office for Immigration Review's caseloads are tied directly to and fluctuate with Department of Homeland Security enforcement and detention activities. EOIR continues to manage its caseload as efficiently as possible and consistent with due process. Cole says the court's independence must be included in any major overhaul of the nation's immigration policy.
And it's not up to EOIR, it's up to Congress. This is only something that Congress can do by legislation, and we're very hopeful this would happen.
Rogelio Mares, KGUN 9, on your side.
There are 26 million people around the world that have been displaced from their home country. Less than 1% of that group has the opportunity to come here to the U.S. I spoke with one woman that's a part of that small group that's made a better life for her and her family right here in Tucson. 10 years ago, Sausan Toma was living in Iraq with her children. She was running a beauty salon out of her home when she got an unexpected knock on her door.
He said, 3 days for you. If you don't close, if you don't move in here, I'm killing you and your kids.
Toma quickly fled to Turkey and was later approved to come to the United States as a refugee.
It was very hard with 4 kids, single mom. When I come to America too, was very for me hard.
Toma needed help acclimating to her new life in Tucson and connected with the team at Merciful Refugee and Immigrant Services.
Merciful, it's a nonprofit agency been founded from former refugees. We basically provided employment services, immigration services with DOJ accredited representative.
Nonprofits like Merciful offer help to refugees, immigrants, and asylees. They assist them in getting citizenship, finding employment, health care, and housing.
When our clients, they come here, they take that opportunity to their heart. They really are hardworking individuals. They really are here to make a better life for themselves and for their family and provide safety for their children and a future for them.
During the pandemic, the Tucson branch of the International Rescue Committee is helping provide medical services like testing and vaccinations.
Making sure that these vulnerable populations don't fall through the cracks.
But Mahiria Habibi, a program manager at Tucson IRC, says the number of refugees they're serving dropped significantly under the Trump administration. In 2016, the Refugee Processing Center reported that over 4,000 people were approved for resettlement in Arizona. In 2021, that number dropped to just 55.
Hopefully those numbers will increase because there are a lot of people that have been, waiting for, waiting to come here. They're ready.
The International Rescue Committee is hopeful in President Biden's recent commitment to allow up to 62,500 refugees to resettle in the U.S. annually.
We have many clients that just within 3 years of being here, they purchase a home or they start a business. So they really take that opportunity and are able to transform their lives.
Having been through the process herself, Toma is now advocating for others that will come to Tucson for a better life.
That's very important to help these people. Some people don't have food, some people don't have rent. Not everybody have family to help. Some people don't have anybody. Some people die like for nothing.
Megan Meyer, KGUN 9 on your side.
I came to the United States when I was very small, so I can't remember exactly, how old I was.
Denise Amezquita says her parents brought her here legally when she was about 3 years old.
So tourist visa, we came in, I guess you could say with the visa already on us.
Diana Ojeda was also brought to the States using a visa.
My mom brought me actually using her friend's baby's visa.
Both are undergraduates, hoping to become attorneys. Denise says she may never see her grandmother again.
If the time comes where she does pass away, I wouldn't be able to go visit for her funeral.
She's a DACA recipient. Diana says she's currently undocumented, but pursuing DACA status herself.
Yeah, if anything happens, our family is definitely split.
Jesus Lucero says they're undocumented, brought to the country when they were 4.
My dad has been picked up by ICE. My younger brother has been a target of Custom and Border Protection in the past.
Jesus says their family has endured tough days during the Trump presidency.
During the pandemic, right around Mother's Day again, when my brother's DACA had expired, they threatened to arrest him again.
Sleepless nights for me and my parents.
This group of undergrads are among the 400,000 reported to be undocumented or under some migrant status studying in the country today, working toward their goals under a shadow of constant fear. For Denise, fear that her parents could be sent away.
Like one day if they were to be deported, I would be head of the household and trying to figure out how to pay bills, how to do college, how to raise my younger sibling, take care of my grandmother.
She says right now she can't even get some jobs.
Trying to get a job where it doesn't require to look at my social.
Diana says she can't make a living either.
So I don't drive and nor do I work.
It sounds like a situation, I don't want to presume anything, but it sounds like a situation where if you could drive, if you could work, you would choose to.
Definitely.
Jesus says their fate rests in the hands of immigration courts.
The only hope we have is that the wait list gets shortened, that processing times shrink.
As students, they have one other hope: Scholarships AZ.
We are connecting youth to the resources that do exist and helping them create a plan.
A plan Dario Andrade Mendoza with Scholarships AZ says will help them achieve, at the very least, their educational aspirations. Dario says as more of their members become professionals, in Denise and Diana's case, attorneys, it grows their community.
And she will actually create a path that then we are able to guide other future students.
Denise, Diana, and Jesus all say they hope to see some measure of immigration reform that provides a path for them to become citizens.
Just like with DACA, we didn't imagine it was going to be reinstated, and all of a sudden it was. So anything could happen. We just have to keep our hopes up.
They say while one administration can make things more difficult,
In general, I just hope the Biden administration just helps get the act together.
They've learned they'll need to rely less on the president and more so on each other and their own wills to get by.
I think my goal isn't necessarily to adjust my status. It's for the government to adjust how they see us. Because I don't think there's anything wrong with me.
Rogelio Mares, KGUN 9, on your side.
Trafficking is not limited to, migrants. Anybody can be a victim of trafficking.
As the fight against the coronavirus continues, so does the battle against human trafficking at the border. And it's Homeland Security Special Agent Scott Brown's job to stop it. He's part of a team of investigators who work to keep traffickers from preying on victims. And online solicitation is still the #1 tactic.
What we found is the pandemic, while initially had some deterrent effect, people being afraid, particularly in the area of sex trafficking, to take those enhanced risks due to COVID-19. Unfortunately, people's appetites for illicit behavior and willingness to victimize. Quickly came back.
Brown also says there's a misconception about human smuggling and human trafficking that should be clarified.
Human smuggling and human trafficking are two separate and distinct crimes, but people can be smuggled for the purpose of being trafficked. Smuggling is a crime of transportation involving illicitly crossing the border. Trafficking is a crime of force, fraud, and coercion for labor or for sex.
So what exactly are the drivers that can lead a victim into trafficking?
Smuggled migrants do tend to be some of the most vulnerable people in our society. They don't have the social networks, they don't have the resources. Oftentimes there's a language barrier. They're afraid of law enforcement in many ways, both from experiences in their home country and their perceptions about U.S. law enforcement, including U.S. immigration authorities.
There are also some dark and shocking realities that fester in the multi-billion-dollar illegal business, including parents abusing and selling their own kids or other relatives doing the same thing. But there are some telltale signs, especially if you see a group in a van or RV.
Some of the things are, afraid to speak for themselves, traveling with persons that doesn't make sense that they're traveling with, providing what is clearly rehearsed stories that may not seem to match to the circumstances, certainly subservient behavior, lack of holding their own travel documents.
Officials say victims can be of any age or gender, and the crime typically goes unreported because of shame and stigma, along with the bond that victims form with their captors, who are skilled at controlling their minds while monitoring their every move.
Unfortunately, from absolute infants, literally months old, all the way up to senior citizens do get trafficked. We see all sorts of cases of people being brutalized as they're being trafficked.
Once victims are saved, that's just the beginning, as they move on to a new life and start the long road to recovery and wellness.
We always try to offer them services. Within my staff, I do have a full-time victim assistance specialist. So it's helping to figuring out what resources they need and then talking to the non-governmental organizations and the faith-based organizations to make sure that we can align the available resources to what their needs are.
Chandrea Thomas, KGUN 9 on your side.
Hey, now